So I entitled this, "And God Heard Their Groaning." And God heard their groaning. We'll get all the way through chapter 2 tonight before we get to the burning bush next week. But let's go ahead and jump into it. I want to show you a couple of scriptures that give us a little bit more information on Moses, because when we get to it in Exodus, it's pretty quick. But let's look at Acts chapter 7, verses 22 through 24. And this is Stephen, when Stephen was sharing. He says, "And Moses was instructed in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and he was mighty in his words and deeds. When he was 40 years old, it came into his heart to visit his brothers, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them wronged, he defended the oppressed man and avenged him by striking down the Egyptian." So a couple of things that we know that we need to establish is that Moses had the finest education that could be provided at this time in the world. There was no better education that he could have. And yet he was also trained in the military. So he would have had combat training as well. And he would have understood and would have been able to live the life of an Egyptian. To walk like an Egyptian, don't do the song or the dance, but to talk like an Egyptian. But we find out that his heart was for the people of Israel. It says there, that and seeing one of them being wronged, he defended the oppressed man. But he says he went to go visit his brothers, the children of Israel. So it wasn't hidden from him that he was from the nation of Israel. He knew that. And the other thing we see is in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 23 and 25. And it's very important that you catch those first two words, by faith. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hidden for 3 months by his parents because they saw that the child was beautiful and they were not afraid of the king's edict. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God and then to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. So we see those two words, by faith. We have a choice to choose to follow or not. That's our choice, right? By faith we follow. And so we have to understand Moses, by faith, refused to be called the Pharaoh's daughter. And so, he had everything given to him. He was served his whole life. And now his life is fixing to change. He makes a decision, and it's going to change his life here. In Exodus chapter 2, verse 11, it says, "One day when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew and one of his people." So now one thing we do have to establish is he's grown up. He's 40 years old. So, I don't know if that's when men grow up. I think women can probably speak on that, because that's about the age you finally wake up, and, we would hope. I know there's some 60-year-olds that still need to wake up. That happens. But we see, that he is 40 years old at this time. And he sees one of his brethren, and I think this is very important. When you look at the New King James, it says, "Now it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out to his brethren and looked at their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his brethren." So he actually gave it attention. That's what it means in the Hebrew. He gave it attention. He was discerned and was observing this was wrong. And again, by faith, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 24, we know it's by faith that Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. By faith, he thought he could handle this problem on his own. And unfortunately, we do this a lot in our own lives. So Moses knew who he was. He grew up Egyptian, but he was a Hebrew. He was from the nation of Israel. And he knew that, and he accepted that. But his conscience, as he steps into these actions, he strikes down someone, and yet he's not doing God's will, he's doing his will. And we see he looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He murdered the Egyptian. But what did he do? just like a child. He looked one way and looked the other. Is anybody watching? And he went at it. And that's, unfortunately, a lot of adults do the same thing. We're looking one way and looking the other, this way and that way, and is anybody looking? No, God's always looking. Let me tell you something. You do something in the sand, in the desert, everybody knows. You can't hide the footsteps. You can't hide the blood. I'm sorry. You see the steps as clear as day. You can tell how many people were there. It's not unless a sandstorm blows in. But even then, there's stuff that's going to be revealed there. But he struck them down in anger. He struck them down and then tried to hide them. And this is no different than Peter. You know, Peter doing the same thing when he gets upset. Peter strikes Malchus and tears his ear off when they come to get Jesus, right, with this little knife. In Luke chapter 22, verses 49 and 51, it says, and when those who were around him saw that what would follow, they said, Lord, shall we strike with the sword? And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus said, no more of this. And he touched his ear and healed him. Why? Because if Jesus doesn't heal the ear, Peter's dead for striking Malchus. Nothing to see here. But a lot of times what happens is when things don't go our way, we allow our anger and the tension of the situation, and we try to make things happen the way we want them to happen, and we don't want to wait on the Lord. So I'm going to give you some things that you need to think about while you're waiting for answers from God. You see an injustice going on, or you see a trouble that's happening, there's things that we can do besides jumping in and doing our own will. It's so easy for us to do that. First thing we have to do is we need to embrace tension. And a lot of you are going to be like, no, your waiting is going to be uncomfortable as it is. And you need to be able to accept that. There's going to be times in your life where you have no control. You have no control of what's happening. And it hurts at times. It's painful. You feel powerless at times. And there's going to be delays. And there's going to be tension. And what that is for you to do is to rely on the Lord. That word, when we think about... when we think about tension, and it's the word in the Hebrew actually means to stretch a cord. You think about how you stretch that cord out. You can even stretch out water sometimes when it's sitting on the cord, right? And it's just that tension that keeps happening. And so many of us don't like that. We don't like the discomfort. We don't like the trials. We don't like the tribulations. But those are to help us to seek the Lord in the tension, right? This is not what I want. Go to God. This is not, this ain't supposed to be happening to me. Go to the Lord. I went to the Lord 3 times today. Go back. Right? Whenever the tension's there, whenever the disappointment's there, whenever you feel powerless, you go to God. That's what it's supposed to teach you. But see, Moses had all of this training to be an Egyptian, but he didn't know how to go to the Lord yet. Like, you can be trained and have the best education, and you can be the smartest person in your class, but if you don't know how to open your word and spend time in prayer and meditate and chew on God's word and have fellowship, koinonia, the tension's going to be the hardest thing for you, because you're trying to control it the way the world does. And that's not how God operates. The other thing we need to do is, while we're waiting, we need to watch out for the potholes. Sometimes what happens is we often waste our waiting through unhelpful, sinful responses. We can have these knee-jerk reactions. One of them with Moses was what? Anger. Anger that did what? Turned to wrath. Turned to murder. Right? It happens so quickly. We allow these potholes to hit us, and then the frustration kicks in, and then there's the sinful anger. And sometimes you're struggling with anxiety. You can't stop thinking about it. You can't stop, allowing it to churn in your mind. And we try to think our way out of the limitations. That's what Moses is doing. Moses is actually trying to figure this out on his own, and in doing this, he committed murder. So he goes from, anger to how do I help my brethren, the anxiety of how do I help, right? And then sometimes you have that apathy that kicks in, and apathy stops caring. You don't care anymore. You just want your way. And all of this stuff is there, and what happens is instead of seeking God, we're allowing these things to control us, and that's what the devil wants. He wants you to be stuck in those potholes. He wants you to be wrapped up in anger and anxiety. He wants you to have no apathy for the situation. You need to remember Psalm 40 verse 1 says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. That's the same thing you're going to hear tonight. They're crying out. Israel had all those gods from Egypt. And it's not until the end of this chapter they finally cry out to who? God. We cry out to so many different things. Right? Elections don't go the way we want. We cry out. Do we pray? Right? No, we get mad. We grumble. We have anxiety. What's going to happen? God's in control. And you allow that tension to control your day. Don't do that. You go to the Lord because you're His child. He wants to hear from you. And you wait patiently. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord. But I've been waiting for 5 years. It's hard. You got to keep waiting. You got to keep seeking. You got to keep asking. You got to keep knocking. Well, can we be patient? So many times what happens is what I want doesn't go my way. Or I've jumped in and I've started doing my will, and then I'm like, where are you at, Lord? And that's kind of where Moses is right now. I'm going to do what I want to fix this, and then now he's going to end up in the desert. And then he's going to meet God. And so our solution sometimes doesn't match our expectation. Next thing we need to do is we need to focus on our hearts. And Psalm 27 verse 14 says, wait on the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Can you wait for the Lord? Can you even in the discomfort, even in the anxiety, even in the anger, can you wait on the Lord? Can you take courage in your heart that God, I'm your child, He's going to hear me. And by waiting and knowing that I'm His child and having those moments of tension, if I'm waiting, I'm trusting in the true God, the God who's sovereign. And I'm learning to understand, like, my life is controlled by seeking first the kingdom of God. And that's the solution to it. We struggle with this. The tension's not comfortable. The trials are not comfortable. But so quickly does anger turn to wrath. So quickly does anxiety turn to depression. And the devil loves that. And then next thing he wants is suicidal thoughts or cutting yourself or whatever it is that, like the devil, this is why you have to be careful with this. Because when that tension's there, that's when the devil's going, okay, I know how I'm going to stir this up. God don't hear you. You're praying, you've been praying all this time, God's never heard you. Right? That's the devil. You know, we need to encourage ourselves in the Lord and understand, like, we wait on the Lord. You need to hold on to those verses. Hang on to that verse in Psalm 27:14. Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. Right? And then Psalm 40 verse 1, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry. Even in the tension, can we wait patiently? And verse 13 says, when he went out the next day, behold, two Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong, why do you strike your companion? And I love what David Guzik says. He goes, Moses goes from first murderer to meddler. He's been on this earth for 40 years. And now you care? Now you care. It's like you're meddling in things that, like, they respond to him. They say, he answered, who made you prince and judge over us? Like, dude, you've been in the palace. We're getting beat. We're slaves for Egypt. And now you want to say something? And so we need to be very careful. It's like sometimes, even I think about this even when we do ministry. Sometimes we'll enter into a new ministry and we think we know everything that needs to be fixed. You come in like a prince, just like Moses. And they're like, who made you judge over us? Right? Just sit in the ministry for a little bit and learn how to do it. And then, over time, start making the suggestions that you think would help out. But so often we come into, and that's pastors too, we come into it and we're just like bulls in a china shop. Well, we can do this and move that and do this and do that. And it's like, who made you judge over us, dude? This is you put me in charge of this ministry. Right? But they called him out. They didn't waste any time. They were like, I love it. A prince that has the right to rule expects your loyalty. And a judge that has the right to tell you what to do and to punish you if you don't do it. So in rejecting Moses, they said to him, we don't want you to rule over us or tell us what to do. And so that's the same thing that happens with Jesus. They rejected Jesus. So that's why Moses is a type of Christ. And John 1:11 says, and he came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. Moses wasn't received. He was rejected. Both Moses and Jesus, they were favored by God at birth and miraculously preserved in childhood. They were mighty in words and deed. They offered deliverance to Israel. They were rejected in the right to be prince and judge over Israel. And so just like Jesus after him, Moses could not deliver when he lived in the palace of glory. And he had to come down off the throne, away from the palace into the humble place before he could deliver his people. God's going to have to humble him. And sometimes that's what needs to happen to us. We get a big head. And God needs to deflate it. Right? It happens. And again, those are just heart checks. Where's my heart at in this? Am I doing this for me? Is there pride in this? Is this for self? Verse 15, when Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. So, what he thought nobody saw, everybody knew. And that's a great thing for sin for us too. Everybody knows. What you think you're hiding, you look that way and this way, everybody knows. Everybody knows. They all heard of it. And it says, when Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. So he knows, like, at the end of the day, Pharaoh has to deal with Moses. because he killed one of his soldiers, the Egyptian soldiers. So if you allow a Hebrew to kill an Egyptian, what do you think is going to happen? That's going to give the nation of Israel, hey, we can go ahead and kill them. And there's more of them. So he has to put the word out, hey, we're going to kill Moses. And Moses finds out and he heads out. He flees the land. He runs. He runs. And you have to think about this too. The devil knew if he could have Moses killed, the deliverance of Israel and their return to the promised land would be stopped. See how the devil's always, like throughout the Bible, you'll see the devil trying to interject into time and deal with things like this, like Moses. If I can have Moses killed, if I can get the Pharaoh, if I can get Pharaoh to kill Moses, that's it. Right? Again, trying to destroy the seed. Now he's trying to destroy the nation of Israel. And that hasn't stopped. But Moses is not ready to lead his people out of Egypt. Not right now. I mean, he's rejected by his own people. But he's not ready right now. And sometimes we go through rejection. We need that sometimes. God allows rejection to happen in our lives. You so often want something and no. But I thought, no. You're rejected. They pick somebody else. You know, it's part of growing up. It's part of us learning. But and the way that the Lord uses it, it's to grow us. It's to draw strength from Him. Okay, Lord, are you going to be like, okay, I was rejected. They said, no, we can't do this. Or are you going to go, okay, Lord, the only way this is happening is if you open the door. See, that's you going to the Lord and praying. That's not you forcing the door open. Because then if the door opens, it's because God opened that door. Right? So often we get rejection and we go, well, I'll show you. I'll show you I know another way of doing it. And that's where, again, sin loves that. Because when you're allowing yourself to be into instability and restlessness and fear, that's when sin loves to come and play. So you know it is, again, Moses. Imagine the hurt that Moses' parents feel. They find out their son murdered somebody. And you go, this guy's equipped for ministry? Yeah. God's going to do some work on him. Right? And then you got his brother Aaron, right? And Miriam, they're all like, what do you mean? This guy, like Moses killed somebody? That was in him? You ever have a family member where they did something and you go, where'd that come from? Sin. But God's grace abounds. And God's going to be working behind the scenes to begin to prepare Moses' heart. You know, Moses right now is not really in a place of meekness. He's a prince. He's a man of influence. Now he's on the run and run into the desert.